Are your data protected?
You know, in the time it takes you to watch this, your personal data is probably going to be collected dozens of times. Kind of crazy, right? But who's actually making sure it's safe? Well, today, we're unlocking the Philippine Data Privacy Act. Think of it as your own personal digital bodyguard. That's a huge statement, but when you stop and think about it, it's true. Our personal data. It's used for everything, from figuring out what ads to show you to, well, even influencing elections. It's an incredibly powerful resource. And just like gold, it absolutely needs to be protected.
So when your information is out there, being collected and shared and used, who's got your back? Who's looking out for you in this giant digital world?
Well, the answer is the law itself. The Data Privacy Act of 2012, or the DPA for short, was literally created to be your shield. It gives you rights and puts some really clear responsibilities on anyone who handles your data.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to talk about why your data is so valuable, meet the key players who handle it, learn the 3 golden rules they have to follow, and then dive into the rights you hold. Finally, we'll figure out what this all means for you.
First up, let's reframe how we think about this. The law really wants us to see our personal data not as just some random information, but as something precious, something we should hold on to and only share with people we trust for reasons we actually agree with.
Okay, so to get how the law works, we first need to know the cast of characters. The DPA lays out 3 main roles in pretty much any data transaction. Let's meet them.
First, and honestly the most important player in this whole thing, is the data subject. And that's just a fancy term for the person whose information is being processed. So in this story, the data subject is you.
Next up, we have the Personal Information Controller, or PIC. This is the organization that's calling the shots. They're the ones deciding why and how your data gets processed. So think about your school, your hospital, or even social media giants like Facebook. They're all controllers.
And finally, there's the Personal Information Processor, or PIP. Now, a controller might hire another company to do the actual grunt work of processing the data. A great example is a university, the controller, hiring a separate testing center to handle all its entrance exams. That testing center is the processor. They're just following the controller's instructions.
Okay, this is a really crucial distinction the law makes. Not all data is treated equally. You've got your regular personal information, or PI, which is stuff like your name or address, but then there's sensitive personal information. We're talking health records, religious beliefs, political views. This stuff gets a much, much higher level of protection. Think of it this way. A company might need your address to mail you a package. That makes sense. But do they need to know your religion? Almost never. And the law gets that. So it makes it way harder to process sensitive info and brings down much heavier penalties if it's misused.
So, how do these players have to handle your data? Well, they can't just do whatever they want with it. They have to play by 3 fundamental rules that are basically the foundation of the entire law.
And here they are, the 3 golden rules. First, transparency. That means no secrets. They have to tell you exactly what data they're collecting and why. Second, legitimate purpose. They can't collect your data for one thing and then secretly use it for something else. The purpose has to be specific and, legal. And third, proportionality. This one is huge. It basically means don't be greedy. Only collect the data you absolutely need for that purpose and nothing more.
Okay, and this brings us to what I think is the most empowering part of the DPA. Because the law doesn't just put rules on companies. It gives real, enforceable rights directly to you. And this whole suite of powers is your toolkit. You have the right to be informed about what's happening with your data and to object to it. You can access your info, you can correct it if it's wrong, and you can even demand that it be completely erased. The law also makes sure you can take your data with you if you switch services. And maybe most important of all, you have the right to file a complaint and get compensated if somebody breaks these rules. We've all been there, right? You're faced with a giant wall of text, terms and conditions, and you just scroll, and click, I agree. But here's the thing. The DPS says that for your consent to be legally legit, it can't just be a box you tick. It has to meet some pretty high standards. For your consent to actually be valid, it has to be these 3 things. 1, it has to be freely given. Nobody can pressure you into it. 2, it has to be specific. They have to tell you the exact purpose, not some vague catch-all reason. And 3, it must be informed, which means they explained it clearly enough for you to actually get what you're agreeing to. Anything less than that, it just doesn't count. So let's zoom in on one of the most powerful rights you have. It's the right to erasure, but it's often called the right to be forgotten.
This basically means you can ask for your personal data to be removed or destroyed if it's incomplete, outdated, or just not needed anymore for the reason they collected it in the first place.
And this idea isn't even new. It has really deep roots. Check out this case from way back in 1931, Melvin versus Reed. A woman had totally reformed her life, but a filmmaker revealed her past. She sued, and the court sided with her. They said that digging up her past was getting in the way of her right to move on. It's that exact same spirit that today allows you to ask for an old, embarrassing social media post to be taken down. So, we've covered the players, the rules, and your rights. What's the big takeaway here? How does this actually change how you go about your day?
It really boils down to this. The most important thing to remember is that your personal information is no longer a free-for-all. It has legal rights, just like you do. And even more importantly, you now have the power to stand up and enforce those rights.
So, I'll just leave you with this one final thought. In an age where data really is the new gold, it's worth asking yourself every once in a while, do you know where your data is tonight? And do you know who's using it? Thanks for joining me.